Welcome to Executives at the Edge, the podcast from Amplify. Each episode features insights from the top network, cloud, and technology executives, giving you key takeaways to help you grow your revenue and bring solutions to market faster. I'm your host, Pascal Menezes. Join me as we explore thought-provoking perspectives from the leaders and changemakers propelling the AI-powered digital economy forward. Well, I'm really super excited to have Mauricio Sanchez. He's the Senior Director of Enterprise Security Networking Research at Dell'Oro Group. And today we're going to cover a very interesting topic on SASE, but more importantly, he's released a great report that you can get. And he talks about the evolution of SASE, the market of SASE, and more importantly, how we're going to get to a point where, we're going to see a lot more coordination and transparency and how well all of this works in MEF certification, on SASE certification. So very interesting discussion. And with that, I want to welcome Mauricio. Thank you for taking your time to the show. And really, for our listeners, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Dell'Oro Group?
Fantastic. Well, Pascal, thank you again for hosting and having me drop by. I am a analyst here at Dell'Oro Group, been here 5 years, but have a long history in the networking and security market. So prior to my 5 years at Dell'Oro, I spent 20 years in the industry across Hewlett-Packard and Intel. And I've always called myself a networking geek with a security bent. Since I grew up during the age of networking and security coming together. And so did a lot of work in standards bodies and software engineering. And so here we are when I joined Dell'Oro and we all went remote because of the pandemic. I saw that SASE and the inflection that the pandemic brought to the table was going to be very interesting. And I haven't been wrong. Right, because I think SASE flourished onto its own. It was the perfect intersection between a new style of networking and security that then took advantage or came to be because of the pandemic. So that's a little bit about myself and how I got into the SASE land.
And what specifically like Dell'Oro? What does Dell'Oro Group do?
Yes, thank you. So Dell'Oro, we're quantitative. We call ourselves the gold standard in the quantitative market research landscape. So we don't do any sort of subjective ranking of vendors. What we hold to is the almighty dollar. So we rank vendors by revenue and business performance. And so we look at vendors and categorize and classify them into particular markets. And then we have a pretty rigorous quarterly surveying process to be able then to understand what happened with particular vendors of interest during the quarters that we're reporting, synthesize that into a master table, so to speak, and then we issue that to our clients, who then look to that data to be able to make business decisions, whether it be investment, whether it be strategy, mergers and acquisition, pretty much anything that is a business question that happens to have a strong revenue component as part of that question.
Well, Mauricio, I'm really appreciative for you taking the time to get on this episode because, I always think of you as the guru of SASE. We see you quoted on lots and lots of, articles, people asking you questions. And now, interesting enough, I believe that you've just released a great report on SASE, SD-WAN, SSE. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Sure. So as I mentioned, we are in the business of issuing quarterly reports on the markets that we track, and so it just happens in the last couple of weeks, I put the finishing touches on the first quarter report, which brought a couple of things that I think we can sink in teeth into, but it's a landscape that is very interesting in a number of dimensions.
So what are your thoughts? What is the synopsis of all that report that you can tell our listeners? Because I know
sure.
It's a paid report.
So there's, I think, let's take a step back and talk about paint broad brushes, right? I think the as I mentioned, when I joined Dell'Oro and the pandemic happened in 2020, I immediately saw that SASE was going to be very interesting. And I think the inflection of moving to a cloud delivered security model has been legitimized because of the pandemic and because it was a better way of doing network security. And so you saw vendors pile in and understand that delivering security from the cloud together with strong networking. So understanding that networking and security need to be bundled together, right? Like I said, I'm a networking geek with a security bent, and when I was on the vendor side, we used to be talking about this all the time. I think SASE was one of the first instances where it really crystallized that was going to be the path forward. So you take security service edge as kind of the security side, that's cloud delivered network security. You take SD-WAN for branch connectivity, and they started to come together. So what's happened in the last 5 years, besides that integration, now we come forward now to the fact that the vendors that are coming to the top happen to be the ones that offer both, right? In the past, it used to be that vendors specialize either in the security side or they've specialized in networking side. And so in the first quarter report, what I said in the press release that the SASE market is now comprised of 83% of vendors who offer both. So it's a strong signal that the vendor community, but the procurement side on the enterprises are starting to think about this as one package, right? Not necessarily thinking of multiple package. The other thing that I hit on my report that is a thread that is starting to emerge over the multiple quarters of the reporting is SASE started off being very connectivity focused, so security access focused. So you think about things like accessing an internet resource and secure web gateway to make sure that you're not accessing the wrong website, or being able to do firewalling in the cloud, or being able to do CASB, so cloud access security brokering. So it was very access oriented. And so the dimension now amongst the vendor community is, now that you've got this cloud, elastic cloud that you're able to deliver interesting services from, we're starting to see monetization of things that are outside what I would term to be kind of the core functionalities that we were looking at for the first 5 years. So if I look at my reporting over the next several years, it's going to be about getting into adjacent domains. The three that are very interesting to me are digital experience management, so DEM as an acronym. It is data security, so getting into adjacencies like data loss prevention and how SASE solutions are now offering that. And then it's AI. So how is it that AI? How is SASE going to help secure AI applications and AI usage, but also how AI is being infused into the SASE for the purposes of making for better security outcomes and better networking outcomes.
Well, interesting about the AI, we at MEF are doing our network as a service. It's our big, mission to deliver as a service for network providers to be cloud-like. And in that, we just put out our strategy for AI, and we're calling it NAS for AI. So what we've seen is that our providers have really a great asset of their networks, that business networks. They have built in cybersecurity, which we're talking about SASE, but I'll expand a little more on how I see them bolting in more and more into their underlays. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And the third one is the edge. And how do they now enable the edge and monetize off those edges, which we know reduces inference times for doing inference for AI applications and AI agents to models. So what we're finding is that exactly what you said, that is AI agents and models have to be secure from each other, and all that ecosystem of agents and agentic AI and models and RAG systems and so on. So do you think that SASE is going to evolve to include all these functionalities for AI? from the vendors?
Absolutely. So that kind of fits into that third category of kind of the where the new buds in the SASE tree are starting to come through. Is I think you hit it with specific use cases from both how do you protect and make AI applications more optimized or secure, but as well, I think you also hit with things like agentic AI, how that sort of concept is now starting to percolate inside of SASE solutions to make those SASE solutions better for, like I said, for better security outcomes. So whether it be threat detection or we want to be specific to AI, making sure the AI models are secured and not suffering from things like AI poisoning or data leakage of some sort from your AI models, but also the networking piece. So making sure that then how can we leverage AI to figure out when things don't work just right, right? How do you get to that mean time to innocence and shorten that for the network administrator or the security administrator to say it's not the plumbing underneath or the what's passing the bits. It's something else. Maybe it's the application that is misbehaving. So I think AI has a huge role to be able then to assist in making those conclusions.
So are you saying now that SASE is evolving to the original SASE came out in 2019 to these three areas? So of course, okay, we just talked about AI, DLP, data loss preventions and things like that. We've known that for a while. So that was an original one, right? In SASE 29, you talked about a little about DLP. Is that becoming now a huge area too? And then the first bucket you described, can you expand more about these new areas in SASE?
Sure. So when I think the because you're right that when my friends at Gartner, I acknowledge that it was Gartner who put together the SASE acronym for the first time. It was a conceptual framework, right? It wasn't necessarily in the way that it was expressed in the. It wasn't meant to be exactly the set of solutions that we've gotten through the last or first several years when the pandemic hit. And so I think what we're seeing here is from a philosophical view, being able to embrace what SASE always meant to bring to the table, which is being able to bring advanced security, advanced networking services to the edge, where that edge may be at different points. It just happens during the pandemic due to remote users. It happened to be the remote user edge, and it happened to bring up the branch edge as well. But I think when we think about the applicability of SASE as a framework, it now is being extended. I think you hit on it with the work that MEF is doing in the NAS to the far and near cloud edge and the application edge that also exists within the cloud environment. So there's elements of that now starting to come into view. And some of the SASE vendors actually now the breadth of capabilities and sphere of influence extends into those domains. It's not limited to, again, the starting use cases of remote users and branches. Conversely, we're seeing how then the capabilities of SASE are being brought into the campus arena. So how do you enforce when people are logging in or coming in on a local area network, like a campus Wi-Fi, for example? How do you enforce a policy? Because at the end of the day, what you'd like to be able to do is ensure security and ensure a delightful network experience. And so I think that the philosophical starting points that SASE had always vocalized are starting to manifest themselves in these new use cases.
So Mauricio, in your report, you also talk about, we see this in provider all the time. They offer many vendor solutions because enterprises want certain vendors they rely on. So there's Cisco SASE, or there's a Palo SASE, or Zscaler, or blah, blah, blah. Then you've also described this idea of single unified, disaggregated SASE, unified SASE, single vendor SASE. Can you explain for our listeners what all that means?
Sure. Because there's many ways to slice the SASE landscape, and so let's break it down to the way that I look at it. So I already touched on in terms of the technology segmentation. So you've got networking on the SD-WAN side, you got security represented by the SASE, so cloud delivered network security. So that's the first segmentation. Most people can wrap their mind around that. That's like, okay, I've got a networking solution or I've got a security solution. Then you start getting into single vendor versus multi-vendor. And what that basically means, as I think I noted before, is that a single vendor SASE solution is a vendor that can offer both the networking and the security, right? So you've got the folks like Cisco, a perfect example. They've got a very strong networking stack. They got a very strong security stack. A customer doesn't necessarily need to go to multiple vendors to stitch together a quote unquote SASE solution. There are other vendors out there who still specialize in just either the networking piece or the security piece. But in my report, I say those are becoming the minority, right? Because I think the vendor pushes to be able to do both sides. Now, if that wasn't enough slicing and dicing, there's another way that I slice the market, which is you throw out the two terms that I use, which is unified and disaggregated. And what that basically is calling to is how is the solution implemented? Because there's what I call the disaggregated style, which is you've got basically multiple products. They come from the same vendor or they come from multiple vendors, but there are multiple products that then land inside a customer, and the stitching between them. It used to be that I used to call it that it was the human glue that brought those products together, because you had to reconcile policy in the networking side with the security policy on the security side, and it was a human administrator. Things have gotten a lot better, but technologically they're still implemented as two stacks that comes within its own pitfalls and as well as advantages. The unified style, on the other hand, is one where from the get-go, it was designed to be a single technology stack. So it's a monolithic approach to the doing networking and security. It tends to bring to the table greater simplicity because you don't have the fact that you've got two engines under the hood, a networking engine, a security engine. But it also brings a disadvantage that if you want to mix and match for whatever reason, then it's a lot harder because you've got a technology stack that is doing both. But if you want to use a different networking or security capability, then it's a lot harder to mix and match. And so I see different parts of the market gravitating to different classes. So whether it be unified or disaggregated, or again, as I noted at the beginning, is that the propensity of the market it tends to be buying from vendors who offer both. So I said 83% of the market in the first quarter 25.
So what are your thoughts in the way of, we're seeing more and more providers. Actually, let me break it down to this. There are the DIYs where the multinational enterprises are doing their own SASE, right? They're buying product, they're getting vendors product, they're putting it into data centers, and they basically run their own SASE around the world. Of course, these are very large multinationals. They don't trust anybody else to do it. They want to be in control. There is that segment of the market, correct?
Oh, definitely. It's a like you said, very small minority that are running their own SASE cloud per se. I think within that, you probably extend to a larger group, which is the ones that are self-managing, right? They're still buying from a SASE provider and using that SASE provider's SASE cloud and technology substrates, but they're self-managing. It's not a managed service that they're opting to get from a managed service provider.
Right. And then there's the one, like you said, smaller enterprises, they don't really want to be involved with that and just outsource it completely. And so I'm seeing a trend where I'd love to get your thoughts on this, where these operators, and I think AT&T announced it, where they're just bolting in a cybersecurity layer from a partner like a Palo that is co-located with all of like the POPs, of a provider. And the provider for underlays, any underlays, whether it be fixed access, wireless access, even satellite, whatever they offer as underlays, comes to them in their regions, and then they co-locate in every part of the world that they're located in, and they hand it off to their partner to do all the processing on cybersecurity and scrubbing it and so on. And then once that's done, it comes back to them, and then they egress out of their network. That's kind of like a more of an SSE play, and SD-WAN kind of is not so relevant because it's coming in on their business networks and so on, or just SD-WAN. Is that still considered SASE or more an SSE play?
Well, I think it's considered a SASE play, right? Whether SD-WAN, last mile SD-WAN technologies come into view is probably dependent on a particular use case. But you're right that it harkens more to the SSE side of the SASE equation. And yes, I see that. I think what I saw over the first 5 years of SASE was when the pandemic hit, a lot of communication service providers or managed service providers jumped in and they did so not knowing the complexity of how to ramp up and make money off that. So I think we saw people back off. But now, as the dust has settled, I think the opportunity is starting to flourish again for two reasons. I'm very pro managed SASE. That is, you look at where SASE adoption has taken place, it's primarily been in a large enterprise, so more of the self-managed DIY, as you want to call it that. So there's an enormous tail of enterprises, smaller enterprises, who either don't have the capacity or they just don't have the manpower or the technology know-how, but they know they need to be able to embrace the new architectural model that SASE brings to the table for the reasons that we've I think hit on in terms of why SASE is a better architectural model. So that's where I see an enormous opportunity for managed service providers, and managed service providers in themselves. I think you called out AT&T, are recalibrating and starting to bring in more judiciously which partners make sense for the class of customers versus what I saw immediately when the pandemic hit was just people throwing darts at the dartboard and not necessarily hitting the bullseye. I'm starting to see people be a lot more thoughtful. And so there's that dimension. The second dimension that's a key benefit for managed service opportunities is the rising conversation around sovereignty and sovereignty, particularly outside of the U.S., where people want to. Governments are starting to say we'd like to be able to have greater amount of sovereignty over the data plane and how this data is being processed. So that's rising the opportunity for a regional or even a large managed service provider be able to instantiate their own set of SASE SAC services for the benefit of an in-country, for example, that may have a regulatory environment that is starting to tighten the bolts to say, yeah, we want to have tighter control over that technology.
Yeah, it makes sense. Now, talking about in your report, you talk about the SASE market itself. You talked about it being, I think, $11 billion and growing rapidly. But is SD-WAN, like when I go around and I talk to operators, everybody's doing an SD-WAN offering. Mm-hmm. Is SD-WAN more pervasive, a bigger market, and now SASE is growing and will embellish the SD-WAN part of that? How do you see all this kind of evolving?
Well, I think the way I look at it is where are we on the journey? Because SD-WAN compared to the SSE or the security service edge, the cloud delivered network security, that is the other part of the SASE coin. SD-WAN has just been around a lot longer. We've been tracking the SD-WAN market since 2014, and so the service providers have had a lot more time to be able then to start packaging up. So if anything, most service providers, I can't think of any that who focus on communications markets that don't have a managed SD-WAN. So it's kind of like table stakes that everyone by this point has got their offering. Now I think what I'm seeing is going to my point of being more judicious, they're thinking about, okay, how do I layer on the security services as a managed service offering on top of that in a way that the delights the customers, but at the same time doesn't become a nightmare for the service provider. So I go back to what I said, that during the pandemic, what I saw was service providers dogpiling into the market, and I think they were premature. And it's through good efforts like what you've been doing there at MEF to be able to put some structure and vocabulary and it's starting to put some standards together that I think have helped clear some of that dust to make SASE as a managed service deployable versus I think the Wild West, the much more Wild West that I think I saw in the depths of the pandemic, where unfortunately numerous service providers got burnt because they embraced this particular technology stack and SSE stack, tried to layer on top of their SD-WAN, and then found that they just couldn't make money. It was bleeding, hemorrhaging money versus bringing additional revenue streams and delighting their customers.
Well, we're getting to the end of this episode, but I just want to leave this with you and get your thoughts. At MEF, when I came as a CTO, I always said, hey, we got to move up the stack, and SD-WAN was one of the technologies, and all of a sudden, hey, let's bolt on cybersecurity SD-WAN, and all of a sudden, Gartner came out with SASE, and then all of a sudden, Pat name came in, and it was like, oh my God, the world was SASE everywhere. Now, we went and invested a lot into standardizing SD-WAN and SASE, SSE, ZTNA, and now we've launched our certification program. And what do you think about it? I mean, one of the things I'm seeing, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, is that cybersecurity vendors have never been transparent about what they're really doing and how well they're protecting. And so I've always said, hey, we need transparency. We need transparency of how well products work. Do they really protect? Bring confidence in the market. It's all critical because, it's a $10 trillion cybercrime economy right now, according to our analyst. What do you think? I mean, we've launched our certification program. It's been pretty good. We really want the world to see that we're the only organization offering the ability to evaluate, as a third party, evaluate how well products and providers are delivering on this. Do you think that's value?
I definitely do. That's always been a challenge in the security landscape, is how to level the playing field between different vendors in a vendor independent way. Because unfortunately, the cybersecurity industry has been in many instances a case of snake oil, right? And so
you nailed it.
I think the question being is that vendors some vendors know that they may not do as much as they claim to do, and it is something that I think over organizations like MEF are in a great position to be able to cast light and be able then to say, look, no vendor is perfect, so I'm not to say that MEF is going to go pick on a certain vendor and beat them up. Every vendor's got their strengths and weaknesses. And so I think that it's rather refreshing to be able then to have someone, an impartial entity, be able to come and say, look, if you care about this, maybe this is your vendor. If you care about this is your other vendor.
But why do vendors don't want to be transparent? I mean, for the goodness of society, that we see this world that, especially now with AI coming in, helping these threat actors and these state-sponsored governments to really cause a lot of, damage, especially to mission-critical infrastructures. Why wouldn't the vendors and the community, and why don't we pull together? Why are we not coming together saying, hey, let's get together to stop these bad guys? Why is it that everyone wants to hide behind and not be transparent? I don't get it. Can you help me?
Pascal, I don't think that's a one beer conversation. I think that's a six-pack conversation that you just opened up right there. But no, the short of it is that the DNA of these industries is very different. You take networking, which is always prided itself in terms of interoperability, transparency, performance, is what it is in security land, because there's so much differences in the approach, right? It's like the secret sauce. And the security is about building better mousetraps. In many instances, vendors, even good vendors with great technology, may not want to tip their hat, whether to other vendors or to the attack community, because they don't want to show how they really do things. But to not say that things haven't changed. They have. So I've been in the security landscape now over 20 years, and what I can say is the level of cooperation amongst those that participate in the security community has improved. So the glass is half full and half empty, and so far that yes, it is improved. Do we have further to go to increase the calibration and transparency? Absolutely. And so I think it's the role of organizations like MEF to be able then to continue to poke and prod, because this is a process that isn't going to change overnight, because we're really changing innate traits to how the industry arose over the last 30 to 40 years. But culturally and philosophically, things are starting to shift. And so we just need to continue to go on that journey.
Well, Mauricio, thank you for your time. Where can our listeners find your report? Sure.
So the starting point is always to go to our website, dell'orogroup.com, Dell'Oro all being one word. And there you could find, we're a small group, and love to have your listeners reach out directly to me. I'm happy to have email or get on the phone and talk shop. So yeah, go to our website.
Well, Mauricio, always a delight talking to you. So much information, and thank you for taking your time.
Thanks a lot, Pascal. Look forward to dropping in here before long again. So thanks.
Thank you for listening to Executives at the Edge, brought to you by Amplify. Be sure to follow, share, and leave a review. Catch every episode on your favorite platform or visit us at amplify.net.